Welcome to Crime Bytes, the show where we talk about some truly bizarre and disturbing crime cases. My name is Liz, and today is True Crime Tuesday. Guys, buckle up today because this one. I've covered some bad cases, but I just feel like I got punched in the heart for this one, and I hate that feeling so much. So we're going to get into it, but before we do that, let's pause for a quick promotion. Not this week, your promotion here. This one is just a hard one, so let's just jump right into it. And today's story brings us to Arkansas in 2020. A 12-year-old girl was taking the stand in court, and she looked a little bit nervous. She hadn't seen her father since 5 years prior. She wore a sleeveless plum dress, sandals, and her hair was neatly brushed behind her shoulders. When asked how she would like to address her parents, she would answer firmly, "My biological parents," before she would go on to answer questions for both the defense and the prosecution. It's an experience that most 12-year-olds would never want to experience, but then again, this young lady had already seen so many things that no human should ever experience, let alone a child. She would be asked questions about her family and her life up until March 30th of 2015. Most of these questions would focus on her brother Isaiah. She would tell the courtroom that she would beat her brother, but she would only do so because her parents told her to. She would beat him so that she wouldn't get beaten herself. But not only that, it was a big family, and Isaiah was treated differently from the other children in the family. As you can gather, not in a good way. For starters, when he was fed dinner, he was forced to eat different food from the rest of the family. Typically, it was just rice and beans or peanut butter. Not to knock rice and beans, I love rice and beans, but imagine you're getting food that is kind of basic compared to the rest of your family who is sitting down for a nice cooked meal or some takeout, and you're facing the wall eating the same rice and beans from the day before. And that was on the evenings that he was provided a dinner. On other nights, Isaiah was forced to eat feces and drink urine, both human and from the family cat. And I can't already with this case. This is going to be a shorter one because I could just sit here and rant about child abuse, but I mean, let's see if I can get back to the facts without going off, because this poor little guy was only 6, and the only thing that he did wrong, it seems, was to be born to the wrong family. Anyhow, this poor 12-year-old girl would tell the astounded courtroom all of this, and then tell them how she was forced to bite Isaiah's ankles if he tried to escape from the dog cage that he was forced to sleep in. She would detail the objects that Isaiah was beat with, from shoes to sticks to wires and cables and extension cords. And she would say that every so often they would yank his teeth out with pliers. Not only that, she was Isaiah's twin sister, and she was given birthday parties with cake and presents while Isaiah was given absolutely nothing. Unfortunately, this 12-year-old girl was not on the stand testifying in court for your average run-of-the-mill child abuse case, and I mean that's apparent already. This is clearly so severe, but it's worse. She was testifying in a homicide case because on March 30th of 2015, 6-year-old Isaiah Torres would be pronounced dead from acute peritonitis or an acute infection from a perforated colon, as well as the effects of prolonged child abuse and trauma. So let's go back and fill in a couple of the details that we haven't yet. Isaiah was born on July 3rd of 2008 to Mauricio and Cathy Torres. They each had some kids from previous relationships, and they would go on to have a couple more together, Isaiah and his twin sister being two of them. So again, it was a larger family. And they did enroll Isaiah into kindergarten when he was of age, and it was at the Ambassadors of Christ school. When he was there, two of his instructors would spot some major bruising and take pictures and report it. And they also noticed him stealing lunches and then scrounging around in the trash, kind of for food. After the reporting, the kids would be homeschooled, and at least one other incident would be reported to the Arkansas Department of Human Services, but these inquiries were filed away as unsubstantiated. Then on March 29th of 2015 at 11:30 p.m., Cathy Torres called 911 to report that her son was not breathing. When emergency personnel would arrive, they would find Isaiah Torres lying on a mat in the living room, but everything about the scene felt extremely eerie. For starters, he was covered with wounds and bruises. His nose was broken, so the police were called to investigate. Mauricio and Cathy would tell them that they had just gotten back from a camping trip and that they had no idea what could have possibly happened to him. So Cathy would claim that Isaiah had complained about a stomach ache earlier, but that she had given him some Pepto-Bismol and he fell asleep on the way home from the camping trip, and then he had woken up and helped them unload the car, went in to take a shower, and then went to bed. Before bed, he was complaining again about his stomach, so she made him some green tea, and after that, he fell asleep. She would say that she left the room and then come back to check on him and find him completely unresponsive, at which point she called 911. Isaiah had injuries that were consistent with consistent child abuse, and both parents were being dishonest. Mauricio would say that Isaiah's stomach was hurting, so he gave him a lot of water, but also that he had diarrhea. Their stories kind of lined up, but they were off because they were both denying any knowledge of any of these wounds, that some of them were pretty bad, that Isaiah had all over his body. And he would claim that his son was clumsy and had some injuries from falls, but nothing more. And the truth would be found a little more in the sisters' interviews. Isaiah was sleeping a lot before this happened. His parents had to kind of help him in the shower. They did make him tea. So what really happened to Isaiah? And as you can gather from his sister's previous testimony about his treatment at home, something fucking terrible happened to Isaiah, and let's get into that. While the family was camping in Missouri, Isaiah decided that he wanted a piece of cake. When this was discovered, Mauricio decided to beat him. And while he was beating him, he decided Isaiah wasn't taking the beating seriously enough and took the stick that he was beating him with, and there's no other way to say it, he raped him with it. He raped his 6-year-old son with a stick. And then he made him do squats in the corner while the stick was still there. And his wife, Cathy, this little boy's mother, would see this. And instead of stopping her husband, decided that her little boy wasn't doing his punishment squats fast enough and pushed him down onto the stick, which ended up rupturing the lining of his intestines. And this would bring on the infection that would ultimately kill him. And yes, they thought they could just be like, oh, we don't know what happened. Their camper would be searched, and it was obviously covered in blood. They would find a fire poker in the camper that had a diamond shape on the end that matched a diamond-shaped wound that was in Isaiah's stomach. Cathy would end up taking a plea deal for her part in her son's death to whatever extent that actually was, and would state that she didn't know the extent of her son's injuries, which, I mean, kind of fair. They weren't, it's not fair. They were internal injuries, but this is a child abuse case, and I can't try and be fair with this one. They were, in what world is shoving a stick an appropriate punishment in what world? Maurice's trial would begin on November 15th of 2016, and 5 of his children and stepchildren would testify about his abuse, both physical and sexual in nature. He was ultimately convicted of capital murder and first-degree battery, and he was sentenced to death. But then the Arkansas Supreme Court would rule in a 4-3 decision that his sentence would be overturned and that he would receive a new trial. And this was because the actual sodomy occurred in Missouri while they were camping, and not in Arkansas, where he was being tried and attempting to be put to death. And I'm sorry, but potato, because really? Because it happened 100 feet over there, we're going to rethink our decision. But that's what they did, and they would argue that Maurice should only be convicted of manslaughter because he had no idea that shoving a stick up his 6-year-old son's rectum could potentially kill him. Can we please... I'm gonna stop right there. If you know me, you know exactly what I'm thinking, but sir, really? Did we really argue that in a court of the law? Just absolute trash right there. There is no excuse, and he should be doing nothing but expressing remorse in whatever capacity he has, in whatever way he's capable of, and taking whatever sentence, death, maybe, that is handed to him. Please. This is like some of the worst behavior that you can find. Am I wrong? Like, ooh. And so a second trial would begin for Maurice in 2020, which is when his daughter would testify, and he would just be crying the whole time. It's important, or I don't know, but I am going to note that he and Cathy did try and blame each other the whole time, and my impression is that they did it together, at least to an extent, and no one was trying to save this poor boy. This was a continuing problem, and nothing was done. In my mind, it doesn't matter if Cathy pushed him down. She pushed him down during the squats on a stick that Maurice had put into him. They're both monsters. That's how I feel on that. I don't know. I think, do you guys think one of them should be more culpable than the other? I think they're both guilty of sin. Anyhow, he would be found guilty again, but during the sentencing phase of this trial, one of Cathy's older sons would jump from the stand and attempt to attack him. So this would result in a mistrial. He had been one of the witnesses about the abuse that he had suffered while growing up, and apparently just snapped. And after a third and final trial, Mauricio was found guilty again, and this time sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. And get this, the asshole laughed at one point while being interrogated, saying that his son was cute doing his punishment squats. You know, the ones where he was literally being raped by a stick that ultimately killed him. Can you even? I can't. Like, this guy is the definition of evil. And one of the sadder parts of Isaiah's sister's testimony was that one time in 2014, after his skin was burned so badly from bleach after his parents decided to pour it on him as a punishment, that he had to be taken in and treated for chemical burns, that he was so happy at the hospital He didn't want to go back to his home because at the hospital people were nice to him and he had a bed to sleep on and food to eat. Can you fucking imagine? This case, this case. Another little positive note about little Isaiah was that he worked at a community center every Tuesday night with his sisters, and he was really helpful, and he really liked to break down the boxes. It sounded like he was just a really sweet boy and just born to the wrong family, and it's just so sad what happened to him. Both of his sisters would be taken into custody and adopted by different families. So let's go ahead and get on to our positive note because this one just gets me going. What do you guys think about this one? Let's bring on Scooter with our Real Facts with Detective Scoot Dog. Come on, Scoot Dog! And today's real fact is quite simple. Sticks are not an acceptable form of punishment. From the way we talked about on here, to even me wanting to beat someone with a stick, I mean, that would land me an assault charge, you know, and just, you don't act certain ways. So yeah, Scoot doesn't like sticks at all. He is a gentleman, not a fetcher. He likes to think of himself as a distinguished gentleman, unless you're throwing bacon, of course, and then all bets are off. Anyhow, guys, today's positive note, I want to highlight another organization. This one is called Prevent Child Abuse America. Yeah. Prevent Child Abuse America invests in innovative programs, research strategies to prevent abuse and support families. It looks like they are helping advocate with a release of a film adaptation of Dave Peltzer's A Child Called It, which is a whole case that really kind of echoes this one. And I remember reading that book when I was younger as well. We could do a whole episode on that one if you guys are interested, but probably not for a little bit because child abuse that is this sick and this repetitive really just hits me in my soul. But anyhow, this is an organization that really is trying to fight that. So go check them out, get involved, or donate if you are so inclined. If you would like to hear another terrible case about a parent doing the unspeakable to their child, if this wasn't enough for you already, click the link here. And until next week, please stay safe out there. Bye.